What's cracking, people? We're back again with another episode here in Casspeak, and in today's episode, we're going to talk about Canadian slang words. Check it out. Okay, so hope everyone's doing okay and having a good week. Let's start now. So for the first Canadian slang word that we have, I have this gold-colored coin. It's not really gold. This is what we call loonie. A loonie. If you're actually looking at the back, there's a loonie. It's actually a duck here in Canada, and a $1 bill, or sorry, a $1 coin is what we call a loonie. Next, we have this guy here. And that is the $2 coin here in Canada, and the $2 coin that we have here is what we call a Toonie. Now, if you've been here in Canada before, you probably heard of Toonie Tuesday, which is a promo that we actually get in KFC before. That was a long time ago. I believe right now it's over $3, so it's not really Toonie Tuesday anymore, but we just call it a Tuesday special in KFC. Anyway, so first is a loonie and the second is a Toonie, a $2 coin. Next, we have the word pop. Now, pop is not something that explodes, you know, it's nothing popping really, but pop is really anything that is carbonated or a carbonated drink. In the US, that's what they would call it a soda, but here in Canada, we would just call it pop. Can I get 2 pops here? Can I get 1 Dr. Pepper and 1 Coke, please? So pop, carbonated drinks. Next, we have the word Timmies. Timmies is basically the short version of Tim Hortons. And if you've been here in Canada before, most likely have seen Timmies or Tim Hortons. It's basically everywhere. It's the most famous coffee chain store here in Canada. In the US, if you have Starbucks, here in Canada, we have Timmies. And then the next Canadian slang word we have is a double-double. A double-double is when you go to Timmies, you'd probably order a medium coffee double-double. Double-double is 2 sugars, 2 creams, or 2 milks, whatever you want. But a double-double is that one, 2 sugars and 2 creams. On the other hand, if you are in Timmies as well, you'd probably ask for a serviette. A serviette is a table napkin. We call it a serviette here. Table napkin, or maybe table tissue, however you want to call it. But there you go. And then next we have the word washroom. If you're in a public place, you know, if you're visiting here in Canada for the first time, you might want to ask where the washroom is. Not toilet, not comfort room, right? We call it a washroom. That's where you want to wash your hands, do your number 1 and number 2, right? So we call it washroom here in Canada. Next word, we have the word toque. Toque is basically anything that you'd wear, right, on your head. And it's a winter wear, anything that you wear on your head. It looks like a hat during winter, and it's knitted, right? We call it, well, some people just call it beanie, right? Or beanies, whatever you want to call it. But toque, right, is the equivalent version of beanie, and sometimes it has the big pom-poms, right? So toque. Next we have the word knapsack, and knapsack is basically your backpack, knapsack. On the other hand, we have runners or running shoes, there you go, or runners, and that is the equivalent of sneakers. You know, runners or running shoes is basically any footwear that you would use when you are doing some, you know, outdoor activities. So anything that you would use outdoor, you would just call it runners or running shoes. So that is another one. Next, we have the word 2-4. So 2-4 is basically 24 bottles of beer or 24 packs of beer. If I ask you to go to a beer store, I'd probably just ask you to, hey, you know, buy me a 2-4 of Canadian, Blue, or PBR. And if I ask you to buy something, if you're going to LCBO, which is the store where you buy liquor or wine here in Ontario, then I would ask you to buy a Mickey. A Mickey is a small bottle of whiskey or rum or vodka. It's around 375 milliliter. So if you're on your way, I'd probably just ask you to buy a Mickey as well, on top of the 2-4 or 24 bottles of beer. Next, we have the word kerfuffle. And kerfuffle is not really something cute, right? Opposite, actually. Kerfuffle is basically a fight or a commotion between, people or individuals. For example, there was a big kerfuffle at the Annex area in downtown yesterday. Kerfuffle. And then if a kerfuffle becomes big, then you might want to call it a gong show. A gong show is basically anything that is crazy, right? Or maybe you can just say it, it's a shit show. But a gong show is really something that goes out of hand. So if there's a kerfuffle, it became big, they would just call it a gong show or a gonger, really. So that's another slang word there. And next we have the word keener. And I haven't heard this word in such a long time, actually. But keener is anyone who's basically having so much energy, someone who's so extra. I mean, if you're in Toronto, you probably know what extra is. But yeah, someone who is overexcited, over enthusiastic, someone who's to a point that person is a little annoying already. A keener is also someone who's a kiss ass. A kiss ass is someone who's, trying to do good things for everyone, even though it's unnecessary. Or maybe, that person is doing everything that she can to get someone else's approval. For example, Karen is such a keener. She's always buying coffee for everyone, even though no one drinks coffee. You're such a keener. Next, we have the word hydro. Hydro is basically your utility bills, which includes your gas, electric bills, and they're all encapsulated in one bill, and that is what we call a hydro or a hydro bill. Next, we have the word Homo milk. Homo milk is not what you think it is, right? It's impossible. But Homo milk is a short version of homogenized milk, which is a full fat milk or milk that has 3.25% 3.25% fat per serving. So it's what we call it a Homo milk, or again, a short version of homogenized milk. And then next we have the word Peameal bacon. And a Peameal bacon is basically a back bacon. It's like bacon, but it doesn't have a lot of fat. It has a lot of meat, actually. And it's basically covered in cornmeal, and it's really, really good. If you're here in Toronto, there is a store in St. Lawrence Market that sells really, really good Peameal bacon sandwich. Check it out. Next, we have the word Zed. Now, Zed is not the name. It's not a name of a person, right? It's also not a store or not a food. But Zed is our equivalent of Z, the letter Z. So X, Y, and Z. We don't call it Z, but here in Canada, we just call it Zed. I mean, linguistically speaking, has a lot to do with Canadian identity and how we want to have our own distinct Canadian English. So that is why. And of course, speaking of Canadian identity or Canadian, the next word that we have is Canuck. Canuck is basically a Canadian, right? So for example, congratulations, you've got your Canadian citizen. You are now an official Canuck. So it's another way of saying Canadian, Canuck. And then if you have old Canucks traveling outside the country during the winter, then that is what we call snowbirds. So snowbirds are basically couples, right? Most of them are retired. They're old, people who would just, go outside, go out during the winter to stay away from the harsh, cold, winter here in Canada. They would go to places like Key West, Arizona. They would go to Hawaii sometimes, but they basically just go out to sunny places and spend a few months there and then go back here in Canada during in spring. So those people are what we call snowbirds. Next, we have the word bud or buddy, right? So bud or buddy is basically like bro, man, dude. But here in Canada, I mean, at least for me, I usually use bud or buddy. And you normally use buddy or bud to your closest friend, to your closest buddy or to your closest bud, or to someone who you just, meet outside, like a stranger, right? You would call it a buddy, right? Or a bud, right? So we use bud or buddy. And last but not the least, we have the word a. And a is basically the same as saying right. And in a sentence, you can say, Oh, it's pretty cold out, eh? Or you can say, you really like that Timmies with some Timbits and a double double, eh? Right? So that is the last Canadian slang word that we have. Now, those are the Canadian slang words that we use here in Canada, most common Canadian slang words, really. And I gave you, I believe, 20 plus. But if we are being really specific, if I'm going to be honest, there are different slang words in different provinces and also different cities. For example, I didn't really cover, maybe in the future episodes, I'm going to cover Toronto slang words or Toronto slang words, right? And there's a lot and it's always changing. But if you don't hear some of these Canadian slang words, it's okay. But just to give you again an insight, a background, these are slang words that we commonly use here. And a lot of people know these words. Now, before I go, I want to tell everyone again that I am having free classes twice a week. We have it on Wednesday, on Saturday from 8:30 to 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and that is your beginner to intermediate class. And then we have another class at 10:15 to 11:45 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and that will be your intermediate to advanced class. I encourage you, I want to encourage you guys to check it out. It's a fun class, and it's a really good way to just really polish your English, to learn more about Canadian culture, to really just learn more, to develop your English. And other than that, I'm signing off. Again, this is your teacher and your friend and your boy, Casti, here in Casspeak. I'll see you next time. Bye.